Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Legends of Korra are some of my favorite animated shows of all time, and their worlds need much more exploration. We have seen so little of the different nations, we've only explored a few avatars, and there's still so much to see in the evolution of this world. Nickelodeon realizes this and recently created Avatar Studios to solve this problem. They have a film coming out next year, a show around the same time, and we have a live action Avatar on Netflix by the end of summer. This is a great start, and alongside the books and comics we've been getting, we have a nice foundation for the Avatar universe, but hopefully, by the end of the video, we'll have a few more ideas on how to make the franchise stick. Just so you know, I won't be talking about Aang, Sokka, Zuko, Toph, all the main characters, because they already have that movie, and I feel like that's going to be enough, and they might make stuff, so I feel like I don't need to mention that. Um, but before we talk about the new things, there is something I want to discuss and related to the new show. The new show will be about an Earthbender avatar, and depending on when Korra dies, this could be in the far future. There's been a fan-made series called Legend of Genji, which I have heard is really good, and I assume the show will be similar to that. But if we go too much further than Korra, we will be in a Blade Runner 2049 looking Republic City, and I don't want that. There are a lot of things you could explore, like technology, how it's advanced so far. Do we really need an avatar? Do vendors even have an advantage anymore? But I don't want the trend just to be keep going forward. We have plenty of past avatars that would be very interesting to explore. Even if we don't do Kyoshi because she has her novel, I would love to check out a past Earthbender and see what went on in time in the past. But now for the new stuff. First of all, I want to see what happened inside the Fire Nation, and I have two ideas for this. Both would need to either be films or a limited series. For the first one, Ursa. We need to see what happened to Zuko's mom and her perspective on everything that went on. She is such a key player, and although there was a comic book explaining it, I believe, this needs to be a bigger scale story. It is an essential part to the story of Last Airbender, and it shows us more of Ozai, and we can see how Azora's relationship with her mom and how that played out, and how she got her trauma, and possibly a time where the family was actually happy. My other idea involves Piandao, though it can really be any character. I would love to see a mini-series about the Fire Nation during the war from a citizen's point of view. Show us the propaganda, the indoctrination, and I chose Piandao because in the end he, of course, turns on the Fire Nation because he's part of the White Lotus or whatever. He also trained Zuko, which could be interesting to explore at least a little, and connect to the Ursa story. But I want to focus on the war from a civilian point of view and see how the people inside the capital live their life during the war. Maybe do it under Sozin just as he's about to die, or the one in between him and Ozai. Because we did see the life of the Fire Nation civilians in season 3, but most were small towns and they were children near the end of the war. So seeing it in a main city and further back on the timeline, maybe 50 years after Aang disappeared, would be very interesting. And speaking of Piandao, there is another thing I want explored, and that is the Order of the White Lotus. This would be a multi-season show, and could really be at any point on the timeline. It could take place during their founding, during the time of Last Avatar, right before Korra is born, or even a time period we haven't explored yet, far in the past, or possibly the future. But the thought of a secret organization of people who are generally just seen as old geezers could be so interesting to explore. See what the group is normally up to, or if it's anything formal, or just a club that anyone can join. Another movie, which I do think is essential, is for Korra, and would be a goodbye film to her. It wouldn't be in the future, and the show would be her last mission before her death, or around that time. In this film, we would see the result of Korrasami, how that ended up, and we would see what all the other main characters we knew were up to, like Varric and his wife now, because the fact still stands. We don't know when Korra dies, we don't know how she dies, and it felt that the show didn't end with a perfect shutting of the book, and there was still at least one more story to tell. Also, if Aang and the gang are getting a film, I think Korra should too. And looking into the future, we could also see like what happens to the air nomads. How's Republic City in the future? How are they mixing with all of the spirits? And once all the elements from the show have settled down, how the future of the world is while still not being that cyberpunk world that we'd get in the future after Korra. Say what you will about Korra, but it is somehow more impactful to the universe than The Last Airbender as far as story is concerned and how the universe is set up. And there are a lot of stories and concepts that need a bit more polishing and given an official ending. One other thing I want somewhat contradicts what I said at the beginning, but I would love to see a super advanced Avatar world, and I don't think a multi-season show like Korra Last Airbender could work in this future world. A movie would also be too short, in my opinion, and there would just be so much to explore, like if benders are even special anymore, or how technology affects the universe, continuing what we started in Korra. The best way we could get this explored is either a limited series, possibly also a trilogy. If it's a limited series, one season, 8 episodes, that they're longer, around 40 minutes, somewhere about that. The show would be very driven, only focusing on one plot and having one main goal for the Avatar that he's driven throughout the show, instead of side plots and side things going on, focused. And I think seeing it as either the next Air Avatar could be cool. The cycle has completed since Aang, and we are so far in the future that all the other stories we've been seeing are at least 200 years behind. And the fact that just air, it would be interesting. With a show like that, you could have so many different directions to go depending on the avatar's personality and the world around them. Also, with air, you could also explore if the air monks still exist or if they disbanded, and airbenders, if they're not peaceful monks anymore, see what happened to them in this future that would be so dark and cold, I assume. But explore what the future's like. Maybe it's not this super dark, cold, chrome world. Maybe because it's Avatar, it's different. Finally, though, I'd like to see a show about the Kyoshi Warriors. This, again, could be interesting because there are so many time places that it could take place. It could be while Kyoshi was alive, in the early days. It could be under Roku, Aang, even Korra. If you don't want to do it under Korra, I would specifically like around the time of Book 4 with the whole Great Uniter plot and the merging of the Earth Nation and see how they react to it. But I want the Piandao show, I want it to be like that, to see things from the Fire Nation point of view here. We would see it from the Warriors of Kyoshi, so someone in the Earth Nation. And there is a lot we could see from their point of view. And if they wanted, they could do similar shows for Air and the Water Nation. Just choose a small group of powerful people, an interesting time period, and shows like this could become a staple of the franchise just as much as our Avatar shows. I love the world of Avatar, and I hope to see it explored much more soon. There are just a few ideas I have. I don't want to oversaturate the video though, as the Avatar universe should never become as big as the MCU or Star Wars, but it should be explored. And after the new shows and movies in this universe come out, we'll have even more time periods and even more characters, and then you explore from there, branching off until you do have this kind of big-ish universe. But those are just my favorite ideas. And what do you think? What spin-off ideas do you have, or even continuations of the stories we have? All that and more, make sure to leave in the comments down below. If you want to see why Haley's on it, a new Disney Channel show is so great, make sure to check out this video. Subscribe to see me cover the future of Avatar and all the amazing animated shows, especially when that new live-action Avatar comes out. I'll be here to say if it's good or bad. I hope good. We'll see. Thanks for watching. I've been Fictional Fanatics, and until the next one, bye!